Chapter 1 Cell Structure. All living organisms are made up of cells. Cells are usually very small, much too small for you to be able to see them without using a lens or a microscope. Bacteria have the smallest cells. Animal cells, such as those in human body, are usually somewhere between 0.01 mm and 0.03 mm in diameter. Plant cells are often larger than this. The structure of animal and plant cells. Figure 1.1 shows the structure of two different kinds of cells. Animal cell contains cell membrane, cytoplasm containing organelles, some visible as granules, nucleus not always visible without staining. B. Plant cell. Cellulose, cell wall. Position of cell membrane. Chloroplast, cytoplasm containing organelles, some visible as granules. Sap vacuole, nucleus not always visible without staining. Viruses. Viruses are not made up of cells. Some people consider that viruses are not living things. You can find out more about viruses on page 151. Animal cells. Figure 1.1a shows an animal cell. You can see that it is surrounded by cell membrane. This membrane is extremely thin and very flexible. Its function is to control what goes into the cell and what comes out of it. Inside the cell membrane is a jelly-like substance called cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is mostly water, in which many different substances are dissolved. These substances include enzymes, which help to control the many different chemical reactions which take place in cytoplasm. These reactions are known as metabolic reactions. The cell also contains a nucleus. Inside the nucleus are the chromosomes. Chromosomes are made of DNA, and they carry instructions that tell the cells what protein to make. When a cell is not dividing, the chromosomes are very difficult to see because they are long and extremely thin. But when the cell begins to divide, the chromosomes get much shorter and fatter so that they can be seen with a good and light microscope. Plant cells. Figure 1.1b shows a plant cell just like the animal cell. It has a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and a nucleus. But it has some other structures too that the animal cell does not have. You can see that there is a thick layer around the outside of the cell, outside the cell membrane. This layer is called the cell wall. It is made up of crisscrossing fibers of a substance called cellulose. It is very strong and it helps to hold the cell in shape. It also helps stop the cell from bursting when it absorbs a lot of water. The plant cell also has a large vacuole inside its cytoplasm. This vacuole has its own membrane around it. The vacuole contains a watery solution called cell sap. Cell sap is a mixture of water, the sugar, sucrose, and many other substances. Most plant cells have large vacuoles like this. Animal cells do sometimes have small vacuoles, but these are usually only temporary structures as they do not contain cell sap. This plant cell has some other structures in its cytoplasm called chloroplast. Chloroplast contains a green pigment colored substance called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll absorbs energy from sunlight, which the plant uses in photosynthesis. So photosynthesis happens inside chloroplast. Photosynthesis makes sugars, a kind of carbohydrate, from carbon dioxide and water. Chloroplast often contains starch grains, which is the way that the plant stores excess sugars that it does need to use straight away. Animal cells never contain chloroplast, and not every plant cell contains chloroplasts either. There is no point in a plant cell having chloroplast if it is not out in the sunlight. So the cell in a plant root, for example, does not contain chloroplast. Enzymes. Enzymes are biological catalysts. Almost every chemical reaction that happens inside a living organism is catalyzed by an enzyme. You can find out more about enzymes on page 23 or 232. Cell membrane and cell wall. Do not confuse the cell membrane and the cell wall. Every cell has a cell membrane, and this controls what goes in and out of the cell. Plant cells, but not animal cells, also have a cell wall. This does not control what goes on in and out of the cell. The cell wall helps to hold the plant cell in shape and stop it from bursting. You can find out more about this on page 18 to 19. Special types of cells. All animal cells have the same basic structures. Figure 1.1a is one of them, but there are many different kinds of animal cells, each kind adapted to carry out a particular function. The same is true for plant cells. They all have the same basic structures, but there are many different types of plant cells, each adapted for a particular role. Here we will look at one special kind of animal cell and two different kinds of plant cells. Red blood cell. Figure 1.2 shows a red blood cell from a human. Red blood cells are carried around the body in bloodstream. Their function is to transport oxygen from the lungs to all of the other parts of the body. Each red blood cell contains a red pigment called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin combines with oxygen as the blood flows through the lungs and then releases the oxygen when blood flows through other parts of the body, such as the muscles. You should immediately notice one very odd thing about the structure of a red blood cell. It does not have a nucleus. There is a very unusual, as nearly every living cell has a nucleus. It is thought that red blood cells do not have one, so that there is more room for hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein. Its molecules contain iron. This is one of the reasons why you need iron in your diet. Red blood cells are very, very small, much smaller than almost every cell in the human body. This allows them to squeeze through even the tiniest capillary, so that they can get very close to the body cells that need the oxygen they are carrying. Another special feature of red blood cells is their shape. They are shaped like this that have been pinched in on both sides. They are said to be biconcave shaped discs. This gives them a relatively larger surface area compared to their volume. This large surface area to volume ratio speeds up the rate at which oxygen can diffuse in and out of the cell. Capillaries are the smallest kind of blood vessels. Some of them are only 0.007 millimeter in diameter, which is the same size as a red blood cell. You can find out more about capillaries on page 95 to 96. Root hair cell. Figure 1.3 shows a root hair cell. Root hair cells are found on plant roots near to their ends. Their function is to absorb water and inorganic ions such as magnesium and nitrate from the solution in the soil. If you compare the structure of the root hair cell with the cell shown in 1.1b, you can pick up several differences between them. Perhaps the most obvious is its shape. The root hair cell has a long, thin extension that reaches out into the soil. This gives a relatively larger surface area, which speeds up the rate at which water and inorganic ions can be absorbed into it. Another difference is that the root hair cell does not have any chloroplast. They would be useless because the root hair cell is underground where there is no light. Xylem vessels. Figure 1.4 shows xylem vessels. Xylem vessels are made up of many long, thin cells called xylem elements, joined end to end. Their role is to transport water and inorganic ions from the roots of a plant to all the other parts of it. Xylem vessels elements look very different from all other cells you have seen so far. To start with, they don't have anything at all inside them, not even any cytoplasm. They're completely dead and empty. This makes it easy for the water to flow through them. Each xylem vessel element has completely lost its end walls, so that there is a continuous space running from one element to the next, all the way from the roots right up to the top of the plant. Another special feature of xylem vessel element is that their walls contain not only cellulose but also very hard, strong substance called lignin. Lignin is what wood is made up of. These strong walls help to support the plant. It is the lignin in a tree trunk that makes it so hard and strong. Even quite small plants have at least some lignin in their stems, helping to hold them upright. Water moves up through xylem vessels because it is pulled by transpiration from the leaves. You can find out more about this on page 84 to 85. How cells are organized. Within your body, there are many different kinds of cells. The same is true of the body of a plant. These cells are not placed randomly anywhere in the body. Usually, cells that carry out the particular function are all grouped together, forming a structure called a tissue. A tissue can be defined as a group of similar cells that carry out a particular function. For example, the sheet of cells on the inside of a layer of that make up an onion bulb is a tissue. This is called epidermal tissue or epidermis. An epidermis is a tissue that covers surface of part of plant. Tissues too are often grouped together to form larger structures called organs. An organ is a structure that carries out particular function, and it is made up of several different types of tissues. A leaf, for example, is an organ, so is the human brain or the human stomach. Each organ is part of an even larger grouping called an organ system. For example, the brain, spinal cord, and nerves make up our nervous system. The lungs and the tubes leading to them make up the gaseous exchange system. The end.